Welcome everybody to Dr. Scott's Maths Made Simple. Tonight we're doing parabolas at the request of a young viewer named Jimmy, who asked specifically if I could do parabolas. Okay, I'm going to do it in 3 parts, and because they can become quite difficult, the old parabolas. So this is part 1. So this is parabolas 1. Okay. Now the general formula of a parabola is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. C being a constant, B is a constant, and A is a constant. However, that is a general formula of a parabola, but where there's one rule with this formula: A cannot equal 0. Otherwise it doesn't work. It's not a parabola. So A cannot equal 0. So you can't leave out the x squared to be a parabola. So when you think about it, B can be 0 and C can be 0, but A can't be 0. What would happen if A equals 1? Well, then we would have y equals x squared. And in some ways, that's the simplest parabola. And that's probably something you're all fairly familiar with, y equals x squared. But what does it look like on a graph? Well, the best way to find out is to substitute in some values for x and see what y equals. So when x equals 2, y equals 4, because 2 squared, or 2 times 2, is 4. So when x equals 2, y equals 4. On my little table, I'm going to write them down here. When x equals 1, y equals 1. Because 1 squared, or 1 times 1, equals 1. So when x equals 1, y equals 1. When x equals 0, 0 squared is 0. Don't forget, in this case, a equals 1. A does not equal 0. X equals 0. So that's 1 times x. Y equals x squared. So x equals 0, y equals 0. So we have 0, 0. What about if x equals negative 1? So if x equals negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1, because a negative times a negative is a positive. So when x equals negative 1, y equals 1. When x equals negative 2 times negative 2, so x equals negative 2 squared is positive 4. So if we go across to our graph to graph it, we know that 2, 4, don't forget you put the x and the y on the graph. That's how you graph. So the x, it goes along 2 on the x-axis to there, and 2, 4 is the first coordinate. So long 2 and up 4. So it's about there, like that. The next one is 1, 1, x equals 1, y equals 1. So that's there. 0, 0, well that's the origin of the graph, which is there. Negative 1, 1. So negative 1 on the x-axis, because this is the negative side, and positive 1 there. And then negative 2 and positive 4. Negative 2 and positive 4, so it's up there. So we end up, what we're actually ending up with is a shape like this. And that is y equals x squared. That's the simplest parabola. So then, that's sort of easy, but we can sort of, as you know, with maths, it can become very complicated very quickly. So what about if we said y equals negative x squared? So in this case, a equals negative 1 times x squared. So what sort of shape would we get there? Well, we just substitute in some x values. We'll soon find out what the y values are, and we can graph it. So if x equals 2, 2 squared is 4, but it's a negative 4. So y equals negative 4. X equals 1. 1 times 1 is 1. And negative x squared, so it's negative 1. So 1, negative 1. X equals 0. 0 times 0 is 0, negative 0 is 0, so 0, 0 again. I think you might be able to see where this is going. If x equals negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, and negative of positive 1 is negative 1. So again, we come down here, negative 2. So if x equals negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, but negative positive 4 is negative 4. So if we graph these 5 values, so the first one is 2, negative 4, so it's 2 along the x-axis, and down here in the negative area of the y-axis, that's 2, negative 4, 1, negative 1, 0, 0 again, negative 1, it's there, and the final one is negative 2, negative 4, so negative 2, negative 4, that's here. So you can see that we're getting this sort of shape here, like this, and actually we're getting an exact reflection of y equals x squared. So this is y equals negative x squared. So that's what you get. And they're two very basic parabolas. And you've just worked them out by substituting in values for x. There's no point in substituting in y because it's a lot more difficult to find out what x is. As things get more difficult, it's much easier to do it with x and then see what y is. So, if we do the same thing again, but this time we do it a little bit differently, what about if I said to you, well, what about y equals x squared plus 2? Well, again, I'll just quickly do it, but after that, we'll just talk about them. So if x equals 2, 2 squared plus 2, 4 plus 2 is 6. So if x equals 2, y equals 6. If x equals 1, 1 plus 2 is 3. If x equals 0, 0 squared is 0, 0 plus 2 is 2. If x equals negative 1, negative 1 squared is 1, 1 plus 2 is 3. And if it's negative 2 squared, minus 2 times minus 2 is positive 4. Positive 4 plus 2 is 6. So this time, I'll just show you in red, we end up with 2, 6. So 2 and 6 up here. And then 1, 3, 1, x is 1, y is 3, and then 0, 2, so x is 0, and then up 2, so it goes through here, minus 1, 3, minus 1, 3, so it comes up here, and then finally minus 2, 6, x is negative 2, y is positive 6, so it's up here, like that. And what you can see is, really, what we've got is y equals x squared just pushed up by 2, a value of 2. So that is y equals x squared plus 2. That's what that is. What about if we had y equals x squared minus 3? Y equals x squared, well, don't forget this is y equals x squared originally, minus 3. It just comes down to here. 1, 2, 3. And it's the same thing again. It goes up like that. Approximately like that. That's y equals x squared minus 3. What about this? Remember, this is y equals negative x squared, this green one. Y equals negative x squared. What about y equals negative x squared plus 2? Well, that's just going to bring this whole thing up 2. So it'll be up here, like this. So this thing will go up there, and that goes up 2 there, from there. So it's this green one just pushed up 2, but it's still upside down, if you like a mountain. Okay, that's all we'll do today. The general formula of a parabola, this is the take-home message or messages today. General formula of a parabola is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is not equal to 0. A cannot equal 0. And then we did some very general formulae. We're saying let's b equals 0, c equals 0. We just get rid of them and let a equals 1, y equals x squared. That's the simplest parabola. Now if you had a, let me pose an ethical or moral question to you. If you had a lady who was pregnant with her 10th child and she was a single mum and she had a disease called syphilis, what would you advise her to do? Well, that was Beethoven, believe it or not. Okay, thank you for listening tonight. I hope you all like and subscribe. We'll go with parabolas number 2 next time. Bye-bye.